Colorado, a local transgender and non-binary support group. She's a facilitator of FOCO Adult Swim for parents of transgender children, a board member of Northern Colorado Equality, which hosts the Northern Colorado Pride Festival, and she's the creator of the large database Fort Collins Transgender Resources and Supports, which I personally use a lot, so thank you. She is a transgender and LGBTQ political activist, as well as working to make more inclusive and informed driver's license policies in Colorado. And in her spare time, she herds cats. Please join me in welcoming Laura up to the podium.
So first off, don't panic. I've doubled the font. Hello, I am. Start that over. Hello, I am Laura Michelle MacWaters. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am a transgender woman. I wish I had some magic words to honor and truly recognize the lives of the transgender people we have lost. Words to say what we all need to hear here tonight, and words to make this the last such night ever. It is my privilege to speak to you tonight, and I am able to do so because of the privileges I hold. I try never to forget that. And as I speak tonight in this university, in this town, in this state, in this nation, I urge us all to follow, all of us likewise, to not forget our privileges and to not let them blind us. Remember to use whatever privilege you have to help others. We are gathered here in community to remember the transgender individuals lost to us in the last year by violence, which is to say by murder. And also to remember that this is not the first time. There were other names and other people before. We are here tonight in support of the transgender community, both present and absent, and in support of all of our communities. We are here tonight in support of each other, person to person, just as every day we all try to support each other. There are many numbers tonight. They all make good sound bites. The most important thing to remember is that we're really talking about people, not numbers or sound bites. Once again, over 24 transgender people were killed in this country. Since we gathered last year, almost every year, all the victims were trans women of color. Hundreds more were killed in other nations. High as these numbers are, it's with a broken heart that I wish that they were the end of it. The true number of murders is, of course, higher. We are everywhere misgendered and hidden and ignored by our families, the police, and the media, especially when they don't understand transgender and non-binary people and concepts. We know, too, that this falls hardest on those without community. I know that all of those we remember tonight wouldn't want to be remembered for their deaths, for being remembered, for being part of a number. None of us do. It falls to pride centers and the LGBTQIA community and organizations to speak their names and to tell the truths of their lives. And it falls on all of us here to speak up for them as well, every day. Numbers. Over 24, hundreds. We can't even agree on how many. But we are wrong to focus on the numbers. The numbers in themselves are tragic, and they do not even begin to reflect the daily violence our community faces the much higher numbers of assaults and the discrimination faced by transgender people everywhere. But the true tragedy are the people that we have lost and the contribution that these amazing, determined, resilient people would have continued to make. The tragedy is the lost stories of their lives, the parts now never to be written. Later tonight, we will read the names of those who were taken from us. They are not forgotten. We have also not forgotten those lost in years past. In more years than I'm comfortable in counting, I have mourned at these gatherings, but I have not personally known any of them. I am connected to them by being a member of the transgender community and as a human being. I am connected to them too by having lived in and experienced some of the same big cities, the same small towns they lived in, including one I grew up in. When I was an young, extremely closeted trans girl, I didn't think it was safe to come out to anybody, not even my family. 4 decades later, a trans woman of color with less privilege and way more courage than I'll ever have, was murdered 2 miles from what was my home then, on ground I used to walk and play on. We all have our own connections to make. The truth is that my connections do not really allow me to know these people, or their lives, or the lives of the people we're here to mourn. I can understand and guess at just a little part. We're all unique. That's right, I know. But we each have our own paths and hardships of our own. Even my being transgender only allows me to understand a small part of them, their lives, and what drove them. Today, Out.com, I'm sure everybody can remember that 6 letters. Out.com published the Transgender Obituaries Project, giving us all a sense of who they were in life. There's no trigger warnings for this. It does not describe how. It describes what they were like as people. I encourage everybody to go look for it, Out.com. Still, I don't really know them. What I do know is they were transgender. I know that this year and every year, almost all of them were persons of color. I know too that, like every year, many of them use sex work as a means to survive, to transition, for validation, and in some ways to thrive. In being their authentic selves, I know that others paid far too high a price for their intersectionality. And I want to pause here. I'm sorry. I was a sociology major. It leaks out. Intersectionality is often just mentioned. I mean by it the multiple reinforcing and overlapping aspects of marginalized identities and lack of privilege. Janet Mock said that I believe that telling our stories first to ourselves and then to one another and the world is a revolutionary act. It is an act that can be met with hostility, exclusion, and violence. It can also lead to love, understanding, transcendence, and community. I hope that by my being real will help you, empower you to step up into who you are, and encourage you to share yourself with those around you. It took me so very long, so many years to find and share myself. I hope you will all join with me and others in doing so. I can tell you it's awesome. Every transgender person I've ever met has felt in stepping into who they were, assuring themselves that they were just being authentic. They were being true to themselves, being simply who they were inside. And they saw this as the only choice they could continue to live with. And sadly, I've known several who couldn't live with it. All of them rejected calling themselves brave. Most also objected to others doing so. I now have to apologize to all of them and say it anyway. We have tragically lost brave people this year and in years past, and it hurts me to say we will lose more in years yet to come. They found within themselves the strength to live their lives authentically. Each of them was fierce. I suspect that most of these fierce people, most of us, would want our lives to count for something, and even our murders to be a call for action. Any murder is too many. Any discrimination is too much. Any harassment is too much. Any assault is too much. Simply put, any hate is too much. Our conversations must go beyond the numbers of those who have been killed. We must prevent this daily hate and violence in the first place. That's a hell of a to-do list. But I'm getting to the optimistic part of my speech. Bear with me. Transgender Day of Remembrance is a somber time. As Janet Mock said, there's hostility, exclusion, and violence. There are also lives, and there are lives that are lost, and lives to be remembered. And yet, I'm strangely optimistic about the future. Though they had their lives taken from them, these people told their stories as transgender people. They lived their lives, not the lives others told them to have, their lives. They lived their lives to the best of their abilities, and in spite of all the many obstacles that people in society threw at them. And most of them, they lived their lives no matter what privileges they had, and most of them had so very few. They lived out loud, truthfully, authentically, with strength, bravery, and courage. They were revolutionaries, all of them. Transgender people are revolutionary. Everyone who lives authentically, and every one of us who finds space and strength to tell their story to even one other person is a revolutionary. Every moment lived authentically is revolutionary, regardless of whether a transgender person is not, whether they are out or not. everyone who visibly, vocally supports transgender people is a revolutionary. I've never hoped to see so many revolutionaries. In less than half my lifetime, miracles have occurred. This former child grew up knowing they were alone, knowing that nobody knew of or could possibly understand a transgender person like her. I grew up in hiding and already lied to my parents about my identity twice before the first small PFLAG meeting was held in 1973. I grew up knowing that being gay or lesbian was illegal and considered mentally ill by all the experts of the day, and knowing that they had no words or understanding or sympathy for transgender people or anybody in the LGBTQI community for which they did not have letters or words. Now, over 1.3 million of us announce our transgender identity in government surveys, and a third of the population knows one of us personally. Now, on this Transgender Day of Remembrance, in the middle of the Fort Collins Transgender Acceptance Month, we were gathered here in community, publicly, visibly, in a university with a thriving student-supported Pride Resource Center, and one of over 20 states with strong anti-LGBTQ, anti-discrimination laws, and with a united community standing behind us and alongside of us. Now, over 2/3 of the population believe discrimination against transgender persons is wrong, and the majority of them support us on at least some issues. They didn't even know us a few weeks ago, it seems, a few years. Now I see more and more transgender and non-binary adults every week who are living openly and proudly, and I meet more parents who are supporting their transgender and non-binary children. You may not know it, I work for driver's licensing. Today I had 2 adults and 1 youth with their supportive parent in my office getting their papers changed. This is all new. This is why I'm optimistic. This is the result of years of combined efforts by individuals just like all of you. This is what we have gained, and this is what we will protect. There's also plenty more to do. This is my call for action. Today, on this Transgender Day of Remembrance, as on every such day, I urge you to keep fighting. Keep fighting actively against discrimination and hate. But we must not, however, define ourselves just in opposition. We must create too. We must keep fighting for people and for the lives they live. We must not only strive to prevent harm, we must also fight for empowerment, support, opportunities, actualization, education, resources. None of us are doing this alone. We are a community. We're working with many allies. Now, we are here to take a breath and draw strength among and in community with our allies. And then we will each go out to our world, and as best as we are able, we will try to help those we can, try to make friends and allies, hold each other up and hold space for each other, and engage and reach people the only way it can be done. We do it person to person, as individuals, as humans, respectfully. It doesn't work overnight. It doesn't work as fast as we would like or hope, and it doesn't work as fast as we truly need it to, but it does work. I've seen it. More has changed for the better than all the wide-eyed dreamers of my generation could have ever imagined. And there were a lot of us, and we dreamed big. I owe these changes I've seen to those I see now and soon to come, mostly to the generations that came after me. And I owe it to all of you. We're not done yet, and at times it is more than painful. There's still a long way to go. But by supporting each other, transgender and LGBTQIA and allies, and by holding space open for all of us, by fighting for our rights, visibly and vocally showing our support for each other, we are making such a positive difference in lives as they are authentically lived. We are saving lives. We have saved lives, including mine. Janet Mocker's right. Where there's growing love, understanding, transcendence, and community,